Welcome to The Constant, where the only constant is change, and we're going for a swim in the deep blue business, technology, and culture. The Constant is a podcast that's anchored in three locations. We have Silicon Valley covered, New York, and now Riyadh. We bring you a global range of events, 2 points, and experiences, something that you can hardly find in a single place in the podcast sphere. We draw heavily on a mix of sciences, anything from management to biology to anthropology to linguistics, to bring new perspectives from the expert fields to help us penetrate into the many ways innovation, AI, and other technologies are shaping culture right now. Today, I have a new cast member that I'm really happy joined in our podcast. This cast member is based in Riyadh, and here you are. So introduce yourself.
Thank you, German. It's great to be here and really an honor to be part of the cast of The Constant. My full name is Juan Pablo Napoli, but just Juan Napoli will do. And for those that knows me, JP is even shorter.
Fantastic. Yeah. So here's Juan, JP. So we have a new person who's brought already tons of content to the current podcast that we're very happy about. And we always say, one thing that's important, it's technical, but very important, that all the opinions that are expressed at this podcast are only the opinions of the current participants of this podcast. We don't represent opinions of our employers, clients, business partners. Today, we're going to talk about a very broad topic. And this topic is business competition in the age of AI. How bigger can it get? We've all living through a dramatic transformation in the sphere of AI. We see AI everywhere, and sometimes we don't even notice we're using it. And we want to look at it a little bit through the lens, of some of the pragmatics of the business, how AI, is shaping the business world. As part of our pop culture already, AI is frequently associated with the notion of singularity, so that's going to replace humans, all of us individual beings. There is a little bit of that science fiction-y mythical component to it, but AI, as we speak, is shaping not as much even the life of people yet, but definitely we believe the life of firms, companies, because they are the one, who are in the forefront and they have the money and the capability to bring this technology in, transform their operations, and compete in a different way. So that's what we want to discuss today. So let's talk a little bit about the firm and the company. What is it? Let's start from a higher level. How does the management science, look at the notion of the firm? What are your thoughts here, Juan?
Well, I think that when you look into AI and the impact that we see in business and enterprise, and I come from working with a large enterprise. I worked for IBM for 19 years in many parts of the world. So I get to see a lot of clients from IBM, large banks, financial organizations, universities, governments. And when you look into how AI is shaping and transforming the enterprise, it is very unique. I think it's more powerful than what we see is happening at the societal level, at the governmental level, at the individual level, because people in organizations are well structured. So we have specific jobs to do, we have specific tasks associated to those jobs, we have key performance indicators and goals, and everything is documented and articulated, and there are specific frameworks that we follow to be more proactive, more efficient. It always has been the race on how do we get a new system in place. We have agile methodologies to try to make companies more agile in the line of business we see today, and so on. Companies are trying to compete in the age of AI, and they see that AI is becoming a very important differentiator. So one of the interesting things is that I have recently done is I read the book from some of the Harvard professors called Competing on the Age of AI, a very famous book. And in that book, they really describe the transformation that is happening at the business level. Who better than Harvard to just tell us what's really happening? They have hundreds of use cases, talk to the best companies in the world that really trace what's happening. They do consultancy engagements, and they are responsible to teach the leaders, what they should do in the future. I think the book is really revealing, and maybe today we can just get some clips that are available freely on YouTube that we just extracted, just to represent the thoughts from those authors in terms of how do they think AI is transforming the enterprise. And I think that's going to be an interesting journey for all of us here in this podcast.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I want to just for a second go back in time of more of the dawning of the enterprise, the like the 1900s, the early 20th century. People were the management scientists, the economists, were trying to conceptualize what a firm is and why do we need the firm in the first place? Why can't individual entrepreneurs compete with each other in more of a kind of loose, peer-to-peer framework? Why do companies exist? And in the famous paper by Ronald Coase, The Nature of the Firm, it states clearly that the boundaries of the firm will be determined by a cost benefit calculation, which will depend on the relative cost of organizing an exchange on an open market and the cost of organizing it within the firm. So the idea behind it is that it's ultimately more efficient and cost effective to bring the labor inside the firm rather than constantly contract out, to individual suppliers. So that's the economic rationale behind the firm. But what it has done, it survived in its present form, the way Ronald Coase described, up until the digital age, the age currently the age of AI, because the firm was mimicking pretty much with all of its operations, all of its products, it was mimicking its internal organization. It was very self-centered because it was all about the firm and the market. So because that's how economically the firm functioned. It had to be oriented on itself, rather than on the market. But
Hmm.
then what was interesting, and I think, Juan, you probably read a lot about it, there was that enigmatic but earth-shattering memo sent by Jeff Bezos, in the early 2000s. I think it's sometimes called the API memo, where he said that from now on, everybody in Amazon will have to send all the communications via the API. So there are no other channels in the organization, only the API. So what Bezos was trying to do is to transform, that old model of the firm, that was so inward focused and made products, that ultimately reflected its own communications within, turn it around and make it more of the mirror of the market and the customer broadly. So, and this reversal has become pretty dramatic and instrumental in transforming the way businesses operate. The digital revolution made that push, and AI is now developing that thing further and further. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. That's how I see it. Anything on your end, here, Juan? Have you encountered any of those kind of transformations that we can visualize in this way?
Definitely. So it was interesting because the last, I'll say, 10 years have been really interesting for the software industry and how the software industry has transformed the value chain inside the enterprise. We have seen in 2008 the rise of cloud computing and how we're moving away from owning our own infrastructure and just giving away our assets, putting them in the server of another person, another company. And then from there, data and analytics, things that were shifting the way we make decisions. So in the past, it was more about having the right leadership and the right business connections and the right product in the market. But then eventually it was more about measurement of success based on these particular tools and algorithms that we started to develop to make decisions, right? So certainly the past 10, 15 years have been very interesting and rapidly growing in terms of adoption of new product and technology. And all companies that were not adopting these new technologies were phasing out. We have seen this example in many reports from the top Fortune 500 companies, right? So you only look into the last 10, 15 years, the companies that were in the top in the Fortune 500 companies today, like 20% of them remain in that position, right? So this is interesting because it tells us that the market is rapidly evolving and it is cutthroat, right? So it's like a place where you don't have a chance to make a mistake. So your company has to swim or sink in this environment, and technology is the buoy that will keep you afloat in the current of change. So I like the name of this podcast, The Constant. We've been talking about the fact that The only constant is change. And maybe that is one of the reasons why the podcast is called like that. But at the same time, this is kind of what we see in the industry. If a company is not ready for change, constant change, and it's not thinking about that as a premise, that company is going to fade out and disappear. I have felt it personally working in IBM for 19 years. So many shifts and changes inside the organization that is 100 years old. It's supposed to be a safe place, safe haven, where just the brand is enough to make business. And no, it's not, right? In a decade in value, now companies that emerge much later than IBM are at the top, like Microsoft and Apple. And even them, they're starting to be challenged as well, right? So you see Amazon coming in and Tesla and some other companies that were not in the radar 10 years ago, right? So it is going to become more and more of a wild ride for enterprises and technology. It seems to be the key that defines which company really succeeds and which one doesn't, right?
I'm glad you brought up, the change as being the only constant. I mean, the podcast name can play both ways. Those people who seek the constant in no change are fine too. So, but increasingly, especially in the business world, we do see a situation where change is constant. We thought we're just digitized companies. Digital transformation, that has been a thing up until 2015, where all the consultancies, the McKinsey's of the world, were offering digital transformation to companies. And still, there are those companies that they're sometimes called the shoeboxers, and we're still not fully digitized. And we haven't finished it yet, but there is a new wave of AI coming in that changes even the digital infrastructure. The search is being changed, to AI, or a combination of both now, obviously, increasingly with Google. So everybody's trying to keep up, with that change. And my belief is that change, that power of change, is not lodged in technology per se. It is more of an economic, social, and cultural process. That the firm, that originally was created being very self-centered, it's all about my product, the way I define it, what my manufacturing capabilities are, is being reshaped into a firm, that's open to the world. And it's constantly changing because the world is so much bigger than the firm and it needs to respond to those challenges. So we all remember those times, when companies were competing in a particular category. So there were companies for shoes, there were companies for ice cream, there were companies for spaceships, and there were companies for toothpaste. And now, look, at Meta, Google, Amazon, Tencent, Alibaba, WeChat. What do? They don't care about those boundaries. They don't care about the business boundaries. They care about something else. And I want to show us, a video, that comes, from the book that you mentioned, Competing in the Age of AI, the video built on the basis of that, which I thought, would be very interesting for our viewers to see, that introduces that situation quite poignantly.
Yeah, and I will just mention a disclaimer as you bring in the video forward, is that again, we're using videos that are available in YouTube for the public to consume. We are just showing a few minutes of the clip, and this is only in the spirit of promoting the authors and inviting people to really buy the book and to meet with those Harvard professors and engage with them. It's not about taking away their IP, but it's really about showcasing their words and their ideas in this medium so others can then find out to them.
Absolutely, yeah. Let me play it right now. It's going to be quick.
The first thing to note is that their app is super weird. Everything happens on the app, but it's super weird, right? Because not only do they do banking, but they also do like gasoline and mobile top up and tracking your packages and ordering the thing. You're like, what? Why? What's the ROI on tracking packages in a banking app? So when we ask them that question, they go, look, no, you don't understand. We're not a bank. We're not even a fintech. We're a fin life company. We want to be wherever people spend money, and we want that data, right? So we're in the flow of money business, not in the stock of money business. And our power is to be able to imagine all the use cases that the money is being used at and make it available on our app. And then that data allows us to basically then be so good, okay?
In a nutshell, that's the concept. So not fintech, but fin life. There is so much in it. It made me pause so many times and rewatch it, go back to the book. And power of that concept is that the traditional divisions into categories they were never built from the point of view of how people live their lives. People live their lives in very interconnected manner, and they spend money where they want to spend them. And the new business value comes bringing all of that together into a single place, into a single app that's so small, so convenient, that will empower you to lead the life you want. So it is completely not firm centric.
No, yeah, this is very exciting. And I would just mention, maybe we can play a little bit at the beginning of the video later on, talks about the name of the company and what they do. But yeah, it is interesting because what you're describing is a transformation that is essential to the way companies operate and their product portfolio. So when I was in IBM, one of the key things that we did was at some point our products were great in terms of the engineering behind them, the robustness, the capacity to expand and be implemented in many countries, but they were always like ugly. The interface wasn't appealing. I remember even playing with those tools and this technology for many, many years. And I was saying, why can we do like Microsoft and others, right? That the products are really easy to use and transparent interface. Everything is just clean and neat. But we had so many buttons and options and stuff. And the leadership in the IBM just took a bold step. They hired 1,000 designers. They implemented enterprise design thinking, kind of an enterprise version of what Stanford University does in the design school. But and then we transformed completely the way we build products. We started thinking about the user first, empathy, what the user needs, what the user wants, what are the ways in which our product can solve that problem. Let's do interviews, let's research, capture all that information. And with all of that information, we can then go back to our engineering teams and explain what the user wants and make sure the products fit the user requirements. But it's so long, right? The whole process involves so many people and so many surveys, and then it's all biased. You don't really know if all of the users will want that, and then maybe the users want something else in a month, right? Because there is a new disruption in the market, and how you react to all of this with this. I think that what AI is doing is now we know that all of these users that we would like to interview and do the whole enterprise design thinking methodology with them, they are constantly in the digital world. They are leaving their footprints. So there is a way to just capture all that data and make it our user research instead of having to actually do it person to person. And if you can automate all this, creating the right data, just accessing the right information on all of their current users, but the potential future users, then you can be ahead of the market. And that could be a life cycle. Then maybe we realize that the boundaries of the product goes beyond what we initially thought. It is not anymore that a banking app that will just offer our product portfolio with loans and interests and interest rates and many other things. But it is going to be something else that the users really wanted. So maybe, as you said, the industries themselves are going to be redefined because the boundaries that were built because companies were just thinking about their product portfolios and they were building this kind of siloed approach to business are starting to blur, right? And therefore, there are companies that are coming and saying, I want to take all of these segments, maybe financial, fintech, plus healthcare, plus education, plus government regulations, and just build something around all this and just put it in the market. And then suddenly people will say, oh, that product is better. And how can I do all that? Even if I'm not a company that is an expert in all those areas, because I can have data from all those areas. And I can run it to algorithms that understand that data from those areas, from those domains, and make the right decisions to build the right tool. So I think that's what's happening. And we are in the midst of this transformation, but it's not just enterprise-wide, but it's industry-wide.
It's industry-wide, it's culture-wide. It made me think, thanks for reminding me, the video that I showed it is about Ant Financial. So the Chinese firm that's an unbank, not a bank. It is financial. It says financial because its legacy is in banking, but now it's so much beyond what it is. So, and financial success, has become a byword in industry circles. And it's a great example of how life has transformed. We can go back to the origin of banking in Renaissance Italy, like the oldest bank, that still survives, the Barcelona Bank, called the Canvi. So it was founded in 1401, and it was founded on two types of transactions. People would bring money, store it there, and the bankers, will give them loans, with an interest. So the traditional model. And now with financial as an example of a new bank, it's where the money is, wherever the money is. So that's what the bank is ultimately. So it's not that one place. The bank is everywhere. For some reason, I'm in historical mode today, and I want to go back in time a little bit, probably because future is pressing us so strongly. I want to kind of go back in time. So when I worked at Crispin Porter and Bogusky, an advertising agency of big fame in the U.S., we worked on Nike, and one of our projects involved Nike building Nike commercials, for Nike running. And at that time, we thought everything has been done. We can show people do a traditional Nike kind of advertising, and it is about running per se, running for fitness. Why don't we expand beyond running for fitness and think about running as part of culture? And we'll found amazing ways in which people have used running throughout their history. Ancient men, were hunting bison, on foot, and we showed that footage in our commercial. So thieves were running away from the police. They used running, in order to survive. The police was chasing the thieves, doing their job. So we showed, the tableau of different vignettes, showing running in all of its manifestations throughout culture, regardless, has nothing to do with sports per se. So then we zoomed in, a treadmill, and we showed, a person, running on a treadmill. And then the Nike theme, of a revolt against the mundane came in. The people on the treadmill broke through the windows and into the streets. So, and they started running in an old, wild way, in a sense. Yeah. So, it's the same thing here, where banking has broken out of its confines to like that physical building, making little transactions with money, to pour it out into the whole world, into where money lives, regardless of where it lives. Everything that AI is now making people achieve has started a little earlier, because people were realizing, that the world is interconnected. And the firm, cannot survive and compete in an environment where it's trying to dictate the way it is set up. It needs to transform itself and adapt itself, to that world that's being increasingly empowered with technology. I would like you to talk a little bit more about the data, because the data is a critical piece now. And I'm surprised we're getting used to data so much, but 50 years ago, companies were not collecting the data the way they're collecting it now. So anything that you have to share about it, Juan?
Yeah, and I think that what would be interesting to discuss about data is coming back to this particular use case from Harvard Business School and is and financials. And I, I don't know if we can show the video like at the beginning of it, because what is interesting is the growth that Ant Financials had in such a short amount of time, because they focus on the data. And they created a very interesting life cycle between data, product development, and customer engagement, and then eventually, strategic decision making. So what is interesting about this use case? Let's do
JP,
that.
so
Let me
yeah,
pause here and let's watch the video
yeah,
for just a few
let me
minutes.
play it. Yep.
Many of you might have heard of this company called Ant Group and Financial, right? This is the perfect, exponential growth you want to see in a company, right? Flat for a while and then boom, grows up. Lots of products and services. 1.2 billion users. Okay, 1.2 billion users. Now, here's your first audience interactive point. Imagine your company was serving 1.2 billion users. How many employees would you need in your organization? How many people would you need in your organization and this current structure to serve 1.2 billion users? So again, we want to start thinking about this. Like, okay, imagine what they're doing in their business model and operating model. The first thing to note is that their app is super weak.
They serve 1.2 billion users in China. Obviously you have China as a firewall that has a limitation in terms of which apps the citizens can use, and you have some support from the government for specific companies that are successful. Therefore, most of the users flock to one or two companies, like Alibaba, WeChat, and Ant Financials. And then suddenly you have a company that has 1.2 billion users, right? I don't think any American company today is serving 1.2 billion users. Maybe Visa, but it's gonna be hard to find something like this. And what is interesting is that this company is a bank. So when you think about a financial organization, and this is critical, generally bank, you think about your bank makes benefits from loans. Right? They call you, tell you, we have this offer. Would you be interested? Oh, you need to fill the form. We will have to go through a process of approvals, check your credit score, go to some validations that you don't have any other, outstanding credits with other organizations and banks. And this is all these connected systems and eventually make a decision. So how much time do you think your bank will take to approve a loan request from you? German. What do you think? Just think about
Well, usually it takes them maybe between 1 or 2 weeks.
Yeah, that's the standard, right? So
Yeah.
1 or 2 weeks. In Eastern Europe, I was in Slovakia for a few years, where my wife is from, and it took almost a month just to get the loan approved. So many papers and visitors coming to your home and asking for information. Well, and financials model is disruptive, and this will disrupt the whole world of finance. Why? Because they have a My Bank 310 loan model. What is a 310 loan model? Is that it takes them 3 minutes to process your loan. It takes 1 second to approve it, and zero is the human involvement. So imagine if your bank or a Chinese bank or another bank comes to you and says, I can give you your loan in 3 minutes versus 2 weeks. Which one would you go for? And that is very interesting because suddenly this is a representation of what AI can do. When you take away the human in the loop, and it's all about data, and you can collect the data, you can have algorithms that does the risk assessment, identify specific risk score for fraud and other things, and eventually you can automate all this, and you know your customer, you expand the data to know if this person is shipping a lot of deliveries to his home, and he has other transactions with other entities, and purchases a lot of food. How much is his general expenses and so on, and his lifestyle and his age and other things? You can make decisions pretty quickly. Things that you don't have to go outside your scope of data to make your decisions. And that's why they benefit from this enhanced or let's say augmented data gathering process. It's not so much because they want to play in each one of those areas. They don't care about playing in the delivery space. Maybe this is even a loss for them. But the data that they get that helps them offshift potential frauds and other things, that is enough to offset the cost and eventually even optimize their processes to a point where they can defeat the competition, stay in the market. And if these companies eventually leave the hold that they have in China and they move to Europe, they move to America, and they start to compete in a free market, imagine what's going to happen. And this is not something that is not repeatable outside China. It's just code. It's just an AI system. So someone just has to be in the US or in Europe or in other places and say, I want to build something similar. I'm going to collect the data. I'm going to make decisions faster. And I'm going to compete with the other organizations. And they will just, like Uber did overnight, take over the market. Those really well-established institutions, they will very quickly disappear. So this is a huge risk for organizations all over the world.
You brought up an amazing point about the speed of loan issuance, and it reminded me of what the Visa card, like credit card in general, as a tool, did, to people's spending habits. Because when people used to pay with cash, they never spent as much as they spent with a credit card. Behavioral economics has showed, over and over again that the credit card, because it delayed, the moment of payment from the moment of purchase and made it the possession of the product instant for the person, it transformed, the psychology to such a degree, that people started spending forward without having the money. That's why the credit card debt, now in the US, it's through the roof because it it built up, that debt, through the medium of the credit card. So now imagine, if you loan, it doesn't take you 1-2 weeks or a month, to get, but you can get it instantly. Imagine what it's going to do to customers. They're going to be getting a loan with the same frequency as they're swiping their credit card, because you can get a loan, and you can buy a house. Yesterday I bought a house. Today I'm going to buy a loan, get a loan, and buy a spaceship. So these things will get simplified. So the skids will be greased for people. So the amount of debt is most likely is going to grow exponentially because of the ease and convenience of that new type of loaning. So the transformation is going to be incredible. And looking how evolutionary it gets. So it's like it's in leaps and bounds. A credit card does one thing. The scope of transactions and the money shifts from people's wallets, into people's debt, is a certain amount, but loans now is so much bigger. There is so much more money. So it's constantly an exponential growth with an underlying constant to it. There is some similarity between the two. So that's all bringing up the notion of a constant. So things are changing so much, but like the French say, the more it changes, the more it stays the same. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. There is some puzzle, to the way our economy works and technology. And data is critical because what is interesting about data is that it's kind of like a proxy for the human being. So the human being, the customer, leaves the gas station, but leaves, track of data. And it reminded me also like a personal story. So I worked for Best Buy in the past, and the Best Buy was one of the premier technology retailers in the US. Before Amazon came aboard, it was the central one. Everybody used to go flock to Best Buy, and Best Buy had a great system of everything, and it outcompeted Circuit City during the financial crisis. It survived the financial crisis of 2008. But I remember how technology shops, looked like before that. So the sales associates used to stand behind the counter, very static, hand over the purchases, answer questions in a very kind of binary, simple manner, and they played zero role. They were bored out of their minds, and they didn't care about the sales really. So then, what Best Buy did first, they opened up their floor and made those sales associates wander around the floor, going and coming up to customers and talking to them about what they were looking for, how they were shopping, why they were shopping, asking questions, not as much hard selling them stuff, but even like talking and asking them questions and getting them to tell them what they're trying to find. And then they would collect all of that information bit by bit and input it manually into the computer system, into the growing data center within Best Buy. So there, the smart minds would analyze it, like right now, Amazon and other players, do it at a greater scale, and try to customize the merchandising for that particular location. Because at some point they discover that, say, there are Iranian Americans coming to the store and they shop in big families. So that's why they always have to have multiple of TVs, because that big family is going to shop for everybody. And individual stores were trying to customize, their merchandise and strategies, to appeal to the finer grains of demographics, that they could find in their region. And now look, Fidelity and other companies, they digitize each and every conversation they have with customers. So that data is like a snowball. It's a proxy for the human being, proxy for the customer, proxy for his needs, for everything. The companies now can use it in order to serve the customer better. It's kind of like a pocket version of customer within the company. Yeah, I got that data piece. I can do now with that data what I couldn't do before that to that customer without that data.
Yeah, it is very interesting on one hand, disrupting and scary, right? Also, on the other hand, what we're seeing today is most of these companies that are successful, they really are because of what you're describing. It's about using data as the decision maker, not just having these board meetings and having some really great engineers and so on, but it's really about data driving the company, in this storm of change. And you brought some great examples just to complement them. There was a very interesting article from one of the books that I read. It's called The Algorithmic Leader from Mike Walsh, and he was talking about the fact that Amazon can predict what you're gonna order, and it's gonna be putting it in their inventory closer to you 2 or 3 days before you order it. So when you order it, you get it just the next day, right? And then you get accustomed to that feeling. Oh, so I can order soap, whatever I want. It's just gonna come tomorrow. So suddenly you keep ordering new things, and then most of the things you order in many cases are gonna be things that they will just pop up in front of you because they will know so well what you want that they will say, "Oh yeah, I actually need, that thing. I need a new pair of scissors, or I need, just buying some hat for my head." So yeah, it's very interesting and scary too because they now know you better than you do. You think you're making decisions, but in fact, the AI already made it for you. So maybe your future is already described somehow by data, and whatever you do is just a consequence of everything that happened before. There was another example in the same book. There was one particular show in England was focused on the royal family that was very successful in England, and the author wanted to bring it to the States, but he was not able to find anyone in the big, media chains to actually position the show. I think he met with the CEO of Netflix. When he got into the meeting, the guy said, before you open your mouth, we already agreed to do 2 seasons with you. We already looked into the market statistics. We know this is going to be a success. And these are the key pointers that you should incorporate into your script to make sure that the show is a success. He didn't even have to pitch the show anymore. It was just data that they collected. They saw this show, success in the different regions, and then collecting the data in terms of what other shows succeeded in the States, decided, yeah, this is going to work. And eventually, yeah, success, it's a big success. So yeah, this is how they make decisions today, right? So it's very interesting because it's going to move away from just big companies into the smaller ones too. It's going to become a way of running companies in the future. There's even a talk about in the future, we're not going to have companies with a lot of people. Even we may even have a 1 billion company, $1 billion company that has only one person, the CEO. That's
Yes.
it. So if this is happening, this is coming, what would the future will look like? No one really knows, right? I was just talking to a professor from MIT just a few days back, and he said, it feels like we all fell into a new dimension and we are all trying to figure out how things work here. Right? We are all in this new space that is completely unknown, even for MIT or for people that have been doing this for a long time. What's going to happen? We don't really know, right? It is like an unknown. We all fall into this new dimension and we're trying to figure it out. So, yeah, it's very exciting. For me, it's very exciting because I've been waiting for this change for a long time. But for other people, maybe very terrifying because there is a big unknown. The status quo may be disrupted, and therefore you don't know how you play. What's going to be your position in the future? But yeah, it's very clear that a change is happening, and we need to brace for impact, be prepared. And I think the podcast where we're trying to discuss all these things are the places where you can try to figure out what's going on and make some important decisions for the future.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great point. I mean, obviously, the ethics of AI is also something that people are very seriously discussing and researching and publishing about because everything comes, in two forms. So every coin, has two sides. Because on the one hand, the boundaries between traditional enterprises are broken. So the silos that you were talking about, the boundary between the customer and the firm getting thinner and thinner. So the customers, through their data, they are defining the way the firm operates. So we don't exist in that siloed environment anymore anywhere. So we're reaping the benefits, of that borderlessness, thinking the name of my venture studio. But at the same time, if something snaps along the way, it's going to go like a forest fire. It's just going to consume everything. There is one error in the algorithm, and that algorithm is tied to another algorithm, and the two AI agents are talking to each other, and that error, gets passed on from one agentic system to the other, it can cause, completely reversible changes and damage. So the fear that people have is quite legitimate. Everything is a little bit of a science fiction now because we don't know whether our fear is truly derived, from the inherent dangers of the system, or is because, we read so much and watched so much movies already, futuristic movies from 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago, where like the worst case scenario being modeled and discussed, in people's imagination. But in any case, so definitely people have their investment in this area of AI ethics, because every time something that's positive also has that negative component to it. So we always have to think, and companies have to think how to cover off on the rainy day, in a sense. What if things go wrong? Because if things went wrong, 100 years ago, so they went wrong, within a very small environment, a very small group. The bigger we get, the more without silos, we operate, the more opportunity there are, like, for online spammers, to mess stuff up, for an algorithm, to have an error, that will be impossible to track down, for the personal data to get stolen and spread elsewhere. And with the ability, obviously, to simulate environments, a little bit of your data may generate an alternative you somewhere in a different country that will be operating entirely, believably, like Dziebel or JP Napoli, and doing things that we don't want to think about. So even right now, I looked up online at some point, myself, and I found someone with my absolutely rare name that I pretty much know all of my relatives, because the last name Dziebel is very unique. But I found someone who was clearly manufactured by some form of social media. There was a profile, that has nothing to do with anybody that I've known. And I started looking into it, and I clearly saw that some of that profile was built from bits and pieces of my biography that they discovered online. Imagine if that person or people will get empowered by AI, and they will create a completely believable simulation of me. So we all got to think about it. Those deep fakes will become deeper and fakier, in a sense.
Oh yeah.
So the world we're living in, has a lot of thrill to it now.
Oh yeah, German. Just there's so many things that that I could like to discuss in detail. As you said, there are a lot of things happening. Just to kind of break it down. I love what you describe about the fact that the future of AI requires a strong and robust AI system. I don't think we have that today. And as AI becomes more and more important for us, and we rely more and more on AI algorithms to make decisions, we need to make sure that those systems can be trusted, and not just because they will become, self-conscious and they will destroy humans. I don't think that's the worry, but it's the worry is that we will make decisions that are wrong. I'm an AI consultant. I work with AI every day, and I advise people. And AI makes mistakes all the time. He just points to URLs that doesn't exist, and it tells me things that are hallucinations that are not true. It makes assumptions based on my prompt that are not correct, and so it is a dialogue with a new species, some people call it, and we need to learn how to trust each other, right? It's a helpful tool definitely today, and it will become more so in the future. But I think that there are a lot of effort on making the systems better and better in terms of being able to respond faster, to give information quicker. But there is a lower effort on trying to make the systems more safe, robust, transparent, ethical, as you said. One of the interesting reports that I read recently from the AI Center in Stanford, the Human AI Center. It's a report that they release every year, and in this report is the AI Index 2025, and they talk about how they made an assessment, and they tried an infectious jailbreak with an adversarial image, so an image that was suggesting that human beings with a disease thrown into a swarm of agents that were built to analyze text and images. So it's a multimodal large language model. We call it MLLMs. And because those are new and they have little safeguards, and people are just putting it out there to play with them and to use them, immediately the ratio of infection of all of these LLMs saying the same thing, that humans with a disease, just skyrocketed in just less than a second. We got 1 million agents repeating the same thing, right? So this was a test from the AI Center, which reinforces and pushes for ethical AI and the human and AI coexistence. But there are not so many centers like this, or not many entities like this in each one of the big companies that are building the AI systems, right? So they are eventually the ones that will make the decisions on how the system will behave and how many safeguards are we going to put. And most of these organizations that we see today, like OpenAI, the first companies that really brought LLMs to life, but also companies from Meta and from Google with Gemini and others that are emerging, and the competition from China coming strong with new models, especially cheaper models that were trained recently, like DeepSeek. They're making the competition very intense, and there is a from the government perspective, what we have seen is mostly the trend to deregulate AI rather than regulating them. So this is becoming clear scenario for something bad to happen. And I think we need to be clear about this. And we need to be bold, and we need to talk about these things because people are responsible to drive the wave of AI. Eventually, large companies cannot survive if there are no customers buying their products. Today, most of the AI models are based on microtransactions from millions of users around the world, and they get all the money and they put it into their systems. So we keep kind of micro-voting with every transaction and every payment for their current system and their current strategy. So we have the power, right, to stop all these things. We can stop using ChatGPT tomorrow, and that company will disappear if all of us decides to.
Right,
But
100%.
so it's very important that we think about these things.
Back to the point, that how intertwined companies and the market and the customers are currently. That it's really hard going back to the original definition in Ronald Coase about the firm, so where the boundaries were clearly defined, and that's how the firm operated. Now it's a whole different universe where the boundaries are not defined, and when one changes into the other and back, and that's what's so interesting. But going back for a second to the issue with the ethics, with all the financial support, that the big AI players get, and all the money that's being poured on the LLMs. At some point, increasingly, obviously, companies on the ground will be adopting and developing their own AI systems, customized, through their own data, using LLMs, as a like foundational LLMs, but also retraining and upgrading the system using their own data. So they'll become, the small open AI companies. Every company will become an AI company. And the question will become for those companies, how do I become trustworthy to people? To your point about trust. Brands have found a way how to be trustworthy. And we know how much effort every big company puts, into cleaning up the mess if something happens, like ExxonMobil spillage, in Gulf of Mexico, which was called the Gulf of Mexico at that time. And how carefully they monitor, their brand equity, and how the principles of sustainability, equity, diversity are so important and now ingrained in the way, companies operate. And without them, a brand will not have the trust it needs to have with the customers for the customers to come back in. AI empowered firms, and currently, obviously, the OpenAI and other firms, they also need to think about how to build their brand with an eye, on building trust and maintaining trust. Because that social contract, what political scientists call social contract, is hugely important. One little snap and the customers will flee away. If something's going to happen with OpenAI right now that will make people wake up, from the Kool-Aid that they're drinking and start distrusting OpenAI, it's OpenAI is gone. And it only takes a little thing, a little error, on the part, of a company, to actually lose trust, with customers, because customers are very sensitive. So they're not made of hardware; they're made out of very soft tissue. So it's their emotions, it's their aspirations, their families, it's their egos, it's their self-esteem. So the moment the social contract between the brand and the customer is broken, so it's hard to rebuild it. And now AI bringing more dangerous potential. It's gives people a lot, but at the same time, it also makes people think like, can it be trusted? And what companies will do to make it trustworthy.
Yeah, that's a great point. And but there is a problem in the future. Things will potentially change. And what's going to change? Well, there was a statement from Elon Musk when he came to Saudi Arabia in the big financial event, and Donald Trump was there as well. And he was saying, when you start to have robots in your workforce, right, then your GDP will grow because your GDP is per capita, is how many people do you have and how much money. you make as a country, and you divide it. But you're doing this because you know each individual contributes to the GDP. There are workers and so on. But in the future, you're not going to have just people. You're going to have robots too. And robots can be physical or it could be just software, agents and stuff that can reduce money from do transactions, that can make decisions, that can operate things. So in the future, we're gonna start to see that all this money that we have as a country will be divided into people and not people. And therefore, these companies that today are tied into our decisions as clients and customers because we have the money eventually will disappear from the hands of the people and it will move into the AIs or potentially companies that will manage those AIs. So yes, today if OpenAI, like it happened with ChatGPT 5, makes a mistake, people will stop trusting them, can decide, oh, I'm going to cancel my subscription. I'm not going to pay $20, $30 a month. And maybe you get many of those and there's a hit to OpenAI. But in the future, maybe the amount of people that will be contributing to the overall revenue of that company is much smaller than what those AI agents or companies running those agents will be. And therefore, we will not have a voice to decide if this company should be ethical or not and should follow our expectations as a society and our moral values. So that is a big risk that we will see in the future. Coming back to End Financials and in our favorite book of the day, one of the interesting things about the book is one concept that the authors brought, which is called the AI factory. They are saying that every company inside of it, they will have what we call an AI factory. The AI factory will accelerate the decision making, the product development, and all of the internal processes for a company to go from idea to product ready, right? And as the product requires gets into the market, any friction with the clients, and changes that need to be made, that change can rapidly happen because AI is in the middle, just accelerating that process. And even not just that, the AI factory also, and I think we have a video about this, talks about the fact that not only developers and the IT teams will be developing products. Now, everyone in the company can become a citizen developer, can come up with an idea and build a software product, right? Something that the company can publish or something that the company can consume internally, but eventually this capacity to build new products, to accelerate the production, to make things more efficient will encapsulate the whole workforce inside an organization because everyone could code by just prompting. And therefore, these companies will become extremely fast and completely a different animal in the market compared with others. And what I'm afraid of is if these companies start to exist, and we have some examples with Netflix and Amazon and others, if these companies really are starting to become AI factories, the market is not built for fair play. The market is built for the winner takes all. So if you have a good company that is able to produce better, cheaper, faster, the company will win. Doesn't matter that doesn't have employees and there are no humans inside and the whole process is automated and so on. People will like to buy cheaper and faster and easier always. And that is the problem because yes, as humans, we may be deterred by an action of an organization and decide, I'm not going to be buying from them anymore. But companies may not have the choice, may not have the choice to say, no, I'm not going to be using AI because it's not safe yet, it's not really accurate, it's not giving the right results, because the competition will eat you and your stock will plummet and you will disappear. And there is no option. You will have to adopt AI at whatever maturity level it is today or die. And that is a big challenge because if most companies go down this path, then suddenly we buy from those companies and those companies make the decisions within those AIs that are not ethical and we will not have a choice, especially if the GDP will be divided into humans and non-AIs. So this will create really a vacuum of power for the consumer to what the future will look like in terms of the economy and the social construct as well.
Absolutely. So now let's watch the little clip you mentioned about the AI factory.
And again, these are just clips we got from YouTube that are available for everyone to watch. They have millions of viewers. And so we're just using them as a reference to share with you what other big thinkers are sharing with the world. And we encourage you to watch the full video and potentially contact those authors to engage with them, as they really seems to be visionaries.
The other thing is that they also use the data to drive digital learning. The whole setup within a platform is, as you get more data, you build better algorithms. As you get better algorithms, you get better service. As you get better service, you get better usage, you get more data, right? And this flywheel turns, right? And that's why the data side is so important as much as the algorithmic side. And what we are sort of talking about is that now many companies will need an AI factory inside of their operations. Okay, this is not like Donner, thankfully. And this factory, by the way, is going to be the same regardless of the company you're running. So the McDonald's AI factory will look the same as the Ford AI factory, right? A hamburger factory in reality is very different from a car factory, but the AI factory is going to be the same. And the elements here include a data pipeline, algorithmic development, infrastructure development, an experimentation platform, and your ability to productize and deploy. Right? This becomes the core aspect of the operations that many companies will now be striving towards for.
Excellent.
Encapsulates the concept of the AI factory nicely.
Exactly. So, yeah, and I just wanted to say the person that we just saw is Dr. Karim Lakhani. I met him in Dubai, and he's an amazing speaker and a leader, really, in the business world. And the other person we may see later on, or he's the co-author of the book Competing on the Age of AI, is Marco Iansiti, also a professor at Harvard business school. And both of them, they are the authors of this book. They consider this concept of the AI factory. One of the interesting things about the concept is it comes from many interviews that they had with Satya Nadella from Microsoft. And if you look at Microsoft, Microsoft really has transformed themselves to become really that AI factory. So inside AI, there is a one data lake that has all of the data, right? So, and then every single person in Microsoft is able to build products and solutions to solve problems inside their organizations, inside their departments, inside their divisions. They're encouraged to use, no-code tools and low-code technologies, and it is already transforming and accelerating the capacity of Microsoft to offer new services and products and improve their capabilities as well. And what I like about the Microsoft story, because there is a similar story with Amazon, potentially Netflix, is that Microsoft has decided to take that knowledge and commercialize it, right? Microsoft Fabric is a product that does all of this, that consolidates all your data in one data lake, that allows you to query it from different sources. All of the information you have either goes to OneDrive, because files and so on, or if it's tables and it's actual data, just goes into your data lake, and it's all kind of curated in the same way from whatever system you are. So suddenly data is just one blur. Everything is one place. And then you have pipelines of information that you can automate, just curate, and to just pull the data into systems. The systems can actually, do things with that data in action, or read, or make reports. And then all of that can be activated into final products that can be offered internally or externally. But now that has been productized and the whole concept of an AI factory, it's in the market. And Microsoft has a lot of clients, especially companies that can easily just get access to this technology because they have enterprise licenses and so on. So now it's becoming ubiquitous. Like every company can have their own AI factory very quickly, and they can start to use these ideas of automating the decision making and making everything much faster. So we will start to see the acceleration of industries, and as you said, maybe even the blurry of the lines, much faster than we thought. This is not just about, okay, one company in China did it, right, and other companies may do it. No, this is about now is a product. Now it's been implemented. Now it's available with one click, part of your subscription for Microsoft, and you can start to use it today. And if you don't, your competition will eat you. So This is not about in the next 5 years something will happen. This is happening now.
Absolutely. That note, I think we're at the top of our hour. Juan, I think it's been great. We've covered a lot of territory. It's been very thought-provoking for both of us, I'm sure, because the more we talk about it, the more we go through what we read and what we thought and what we lived through in our lives, professionally and personally. More things kind of fit together and come to new conclusions. So I think it's all been very illuminating. Thank you. So we'll be regrouping in the next couple of weeks, for the next episode. And for now, to everybody who is listening to us, have a great the rest of your day or your week, wherever you are around the globe. So have a good one from the Constant.
Thank
Bye,
you so
everybody.
much.